Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome you here tonight to Wittocx on behalf of our director, Daphne Ayas, and the whole team here at the Institute to this event, Performance Taxonomies, which is part of our programming around our current exhibition with Michael Portnoy, Relational Stalinism, the musical, which ran today and is in its final round of kind of performances. So if you want to catch it before it ends, do come on Saturday or Sunday from 2 till 6. So Daphne has worked very closely with Michael for many years on projects such as the Baltic Triennial, and I worked as the curator on this show also. Tonight loosely follows a structure devised by Portnoy following his previous project, the Improvement League, where invited collaborators invent new breeds of art by improving current artworks, pruning, grafting, and transmuting their forms and ideas. As the title of the symposium suggests, we invited these brave speakers here tonight to identify and define existing categories of performance in order to propose speculative future horizons, with perhaps an implicit critique of what is lacking from performance or indeed curatorial and institutional framings of performance today. Their areas of focus include future breeds of the theoretical terrains and future breeds of dance. Our speakers tonight include Igor Dobricic, dramaturg and artistic advisor to many choreographers, who also teaches concept development at the Amsterdam School for New Dance, SNDO, and since 2009 has served as a research fellow with the Amsterdam School of the Arts. Bojana Mladenovic is artistic director of SNDO, having moved on from having previously served as director of Amsterdam's Het Wiem Theatre. Eva Wittocx is curator and art critic, currently head of the Contemporary Art Department at Museum N in Leuven, and co-curator of the yearly live art performance festival Playground. Michael Portnoy is an artist and director of behavior who has presented internationally in museums, art galleries, theatres and music halls, including the Centre Pompidou, Stedelijk Museum Amsterdam, Palais de Tokyo Paris, Documenta 13, amongst many, many others. For full biographies, do refer to your handouts. So we're going to invite each of our speakers up now to make their presentations of their taxonomies that they've devised. And after these, there will be a kind of group conversation followed by a Q&A where you can ask the speakers any questions. Enjoy.
Hello, good evening. I was asked to present some sort of categories or this classification of performance happening in the museum. My background is working in a museum and organizing festivals relating to the museum context. I try to make like six categories where all kinds of performances that I came along to discover in many places could fit into. And it's kind of dry material. I was looking more at the parameters around it, not really at the content, about how things exist and how things relate to the museum and to things happening in the museum. The examples that I'm giving, it's just an exercise, and these are examples. I don't want to really make a quality label on these things. So I'm going to show you lots of images and how they relate to each other and how things can change and fit into one another. So the starting point was the museum, and this is then clearly the venue or the location for these performances that I will be showing. It's not a stage, it's not a theater, it's not public space, it's really things happening within an exhibition or a museum context. And I started here with like saying the main things or things that come back. Like in a museum you have art objects or things to see, you have bodies, subjects, people, and there's notions of time that all are quite different than time in staging arts or in a theater. So let's move to the first one. It's the relation that's often questioned or is played with between an object and a subject. Performative objects, performative installations, objects that are animated, installations that come alive, all these kind of performances that could happen in there. And also the body, relation object-body, the body could be many kind of bodies, like you see here, it could be visitors, performers, and all kinds of specific things. Every time I will show you some examples, and then move on to another kind of category. And in the second part, and more towards the end, there will be like open questions or open possibilities. Installations that could be performative, things happening like puppets with a computer behind it, with sensors, things reacting to visitors and entering. So artworks that are in a way also performative, that something comes alive. Could be ongoing when people enter or all the time in a museum, or it could be here like with Giselle Vien's performance. This was at the Whitney Biennial. At specific times that the puppet starts to talk, audio comes along, there's a story that animates the performance or the installation that is there. Other example, an exhibition by Geoffrey Farmer that is also motorized. Everything is moving, smoke comes out, sounds comes up, light is moving. These are objects, situations in a museum that are actually not with live bodies, but these objects or these situations come alive. If you turn it around and go to the opposite, you have artists like Alexandria Perici and Manuel Pelmus that try to make with their bodies the artworks or the objects. Maybe you recognize it here. It's the poses of the famous Velázquez painting Las Meninas. So they look at existing artworks and they mimic it with their bodies. They make it into a performance that they present in the museum. Other example, Vanessa Beecroft's big tableau vivants, compositions of bodies. These bodies are not moving, they're almost there like a painting of, like a work of art, just a presence in the museum. Or work by an Italian artist where he had some naked performers hiding in the museum, running away from visitors, just trying not to be seen. A kind of presence that plays with the absence or plays with the object kind of status of a body. Artists like Santiago Sierra could fit into that object-subject category. And here you come into inviting really specific profiles of people, of bodies coming into the exhibition or the museum as an object in a way. These are the works where he, for example, invited these war heroes or war veterans to just stand in the corner of an exhibition for a long time. Or this other queue where unemployed people that he was looking for in specific cities, and he paid them the minimum wage of that city just to stand there with their face to the wall, just presenting some idea there with a body in the space. Specific profiles of bodies of people in the museum. Italian artists at Artissima last year that invited like famous football players to come and show their tricks with the football in the museum, in the gallery. Presenting something, a movement, a trick, but not really like a performative big statement, a presence in the museum. Or the work that's quite known, the Roman Andik, Good Feelings in Good Times, like this artificial waiting queue. This is a group of volunteers, performers being present in the museum. And you can see them as a queue that you can just pass. You get a good feeling by seeing that queue, and you can go past that. So these are some examples of this object-subject category. Second one, performing with objects, more like a narrative, a storytelling, a concept, something that goes further than a presence in the museum. And objects can be many kinds of objects. Here in the Venice, the American Pavilion, objects present in a space, and then at specific times, performers come in. Here you had gymnasts doing performative things around it. Or here, French artist Béatrice Balcou, who in the galleries made small performances where she packed and unpacked artworks and showed them for a little while, just making the object present and come alive. Or French artist Guy de Cointet, who had artworks in the museum galleries in exhibitions, and at specific announced moments, performers came in, actors that told like fictional stories, like theater pieces around specific works. So here you have works in the exhibition and the performance happening around it. Or there's lots of artists working with performance where the opening event is a kind of active performance, and then later on sometimes remains, stay in the exhibition or documentation, or it activates the start of an exhibition. Artists like John Bock, who do performance in their installations, in their exhibitions, and then often have a video there that shows how it was activated, how the installation, the artwork was used. So here you go a little further of performing with the artworks in the museum. One step further, I would call like real full performances in the museum, things that are not just focused on one artwork, but have more, go closer towards staging arts, often use many actors, use light, use sound, and stay there for a longer while. The museum becomes more a location rather than the artwork as a trigger for performance. Some examples, Grace Schwind, who made an installation where at announced moments every day a performance took place with a dancer, with a singer, with specific lights. A performance by Orla Berry, which was shown in an exhibition for several weeks, and then at specific times a performance took place that activated these objects. I also included a previous work of Michael where you had a big sculpture in the documenta, and at announced times you could go in and participate at the performance that was taking place inside. In this category, where you have real performances taking place in exhibitions or museums, you also have these crossovers, or artists making performances in the museum that make stage versions and then gallery versions of the same performance. Like most recently, Anna Teresa de Keersmaker, who transformed or reworked a stage performance for the Wheels and for some other museums where she's showing that work too. Or also artists working much more in staging arts field often think it's interesting or use this interest of translating the stage presence to an exhibition context. Or some artists that really like this white cube space of the museum, but often don't really use the possibilities or what's there special to it. They empty it out and they use it as a venue for a theater piece or a dance piece. Like Larry Beau, she often presented her pieces in the museum that she also presented on stage or made some small variations with it. And I think what's really special and should be used more, or is interesting to use in the museum, is these different notions of time. Like when you go to a theater, you go in at a certain moment, you know how long it lasts, and then you're out and it's ending. And the museum has a completely different time frame, and this is often used by artists, and I think is really crucial and should be used more, not like in these previous examples, more these staging art translations, but really work with this time notion. So I mentioned here some of these things that are used, can be used. Some examples, the Pierre Huyghe exhibition at the Centre Pompidou, where you had lots of artworks in this big solo show, and there were some performances coming in at specific times. Some were ongoing, some were unannounced, unexpected. You had this person with a mask, the dog, just going around the show. So some unannounced extra elements in exhibitions. An exhibition by Marie Cool and Fabio Balducci in the Consortium in Dijon, where throughout the show there was an ongoing performances at all these sculptures and tables standing around the show, and performers or the artists themselves all the time present in the space. So this ongoing notion of using the full length and the full hours of an exhibition or a museum is an interesting challenge to play with for a live performance. A recent or an interesting case is this exhibition by Mathieu Copland, which was traveled to several places, a choreographed exhibition where he ordered several artists to give him a score for a work in an exhibition. And some made performances that were ongoing throughout the days and the show. Others were just happening once in the beginning or in the end. So you had empty spaces and all the time things, little things, more things happening, and you could hang around for as long as you wanted. Didi Dorvillier, for a show in Porto, in Serralves, she made a catalogue of steps where you had performers hanging around in the exhibition galleries, and they kind of gave you a menu of movements, past movements of hers that they studied to pick from, and then these dancers or these performers presented it to you in person or in a group. This, I think, is also a really interesting notion, this idea that you, as a visitor, can pick from a kind of menu of list the things you want to see, and people presenting something for you. A kind of other range of these categories, playing with time, are exhibitions that kind of embrace the notions of theater, like a black box, light going on, things changing, and a kind of timed experience where you have to wait for the next artwork or the next installation to happen. This is an example pickup, it was called, where you really had to stay in the gallery for about half an hour, and then every work would lit up, a television started to play, after that a light work, like this one here, would lit up. Then a drawing on the wall got a spotlight, so you really had this experience of an exhibition like a theater performance. A more recent show in the project in Dublin and in the festival in Graz, again, where you had a big show where everything was timed. You had to wait, like in a theater piece, for the story, for the narrative to develop. And I think there's many options even in there, like we go to the museum and some people visited it in 10 minutes, others stay 2 hours. And I do like this idea to play with your notion of time and waiting and how long you can look and wait for things. And I also think there's much more options that could be used maybe in this direction, like included here, like green key things. And this overview of the live and digital, the real, the things projected, I found this strange image online where you had these real life performances like Marina Abramovic in the MoMA and like digital translations, games, even like performances in Second Life. I noticed how to translate these things and how to give them another presence than the live thing in the museum. Another notion besides time that I think is really important for the museum is interaction. Like in the theater, you often sitting on your seat and things are happening on the stage at a nice and safe distance from you. And lots of performances play with this interaction or things that can change, or relations that can change between people, works, objects. This is a project by Jean-Pascal Flavien where all the artworks are packed in shoeboxes and one person is present and you can pick one. and this person will unpack them and present them to you and give you an explanation for as long as you want to see things. And more museums are also playing with these notions of co-creation, they call it, like people should be more involved, pick things themselves, think with them, should have the possibility to include their own wishes and things. So there's lots of, mostly in the States now, but I think it's more and more like coming here, or people trying to stimulate us to think about that. Okay, let people bring on something of, make their own museum, make their own installation. And I think with performance, and this could also be an interesting option to think about. Interaction, participation, artists like Franz Erhard Walter, who makes art objects that you as a visitor can create a performance. You have volunteers or people guards in the space that show you how to do it, how to make a performance yourself, how to present it. And I think it's really nice to, if artists conceive it that way, that you present them that way, and not like in some exhibitions. I included a small image where they are shown as objects not to be touched or used. If things should be able to live in the museum. Other examples, Erwin Wurm, his 1-minute sculptures, objects in the exhibition gallery with instructions that visitors can use themselves and create their own performance. People like a lot some recent Roman Ondak works where one can add something of themselves inside of the installation, like your own height in this one. And I also like this image because of you want to make a picture of it from social media, these selfies, this really nice idea that you're part of it, that you contributed to the work. And I think this interacting with social media is also something that's really what people want, and we should think of how to relate to that, include it or not. Of course, an artist working a lot with social interaction, with exchanging stories and information. Somebody like Tino Segal, who's really present in museums all over and has done a lot in that range. Artists like Yiriko Vanda, waiting behind a glass wall for you to give him a kiss on the other side of the glass. Interaction, live performativity, the artist present, and it's up to you to step in and to do this act with him. It's a really simple part of interaction, adding something of yourself, and I think in the new media, digital ways, there's lots of options there to explore how to interact with artworks in the digital, in the live, with visitors, with performers. An artist working with that already since a long time is Dore Garcia. An installation that I think is really interesting here is at the backside you see a man behind a laptop, and what he does is he describes what he sees, which is the visitors in the space, and then this text appears on the wall. So you can start playing with him, interact, do things, say something to him, behave in a certain way in the space, and he will describe it, and you will see your own score or your own narrative unfolding before your eyes together with these others. And I think this way of interacting could also be explored more. On the internet you see the most crazy and stupid things of people, how to interact with 3D, with things moving, changing. But I think we look for more clever and interesting ways to really interact with artworks that goes on another level. And I think the digital, like Dora Garcia used it in a really simple way, could be playing a part in that as well. So if I would look into the specifics of a museum context for performance, it's this relationship with objects that's very important. and perhaps also playing with the formats that are present in the museum, like guided tours, like an audio guides, touch screens, all these things that become more and more at hand in museum, how future performances can relate to that and play with that in a clever way, maybe also work with the staff that is there as kind of performers in the space. I included here Andrea Fraser, who gives alternative tour guides exposing different histories or narratives of a museum and playing with that format of guiding people around the museum context. Audio guides are much more present in almost every museum, like the one I work. People get it for free, and they're often so boring and so educational correct. I think there's lots of challenges there to work with that and to play with these fixed formats around the museum. Working with the guards, like here this Elm Green and Dragset performance, just exposing and guarding and exchanging the guards themselves. I think these people are there, these people are like present performers. They could play different roles, I guess, too. This is an image I found online. It's actually an advertisement for a lamp, how strong it is. It can burn a painting. Making combinations, artworks. I think these people are there, these objects are there, things could happen. Recently you see so many exhibitions where at the very end you have a kind of double of a painting where you can put your head into, like really bad way of interacting with audiences for making pictures or selfies. I think this could also be a field to work on in this area. But there are also artists like here, London Saiter, who create these alternative tours in the museum, who offer ways of other storytelling, other tours, working with the senses, sometimes blindfolded, introducing other narratives. And I think working with this digital area is something that could be really interesting, and this will more and more happen. People interacting with their cell phones. You see everybody taking pictures in the museums, posting it online, being there, and I think performance can look for ways to include that. Also, these VR, these glasses, all these things could be interesting. But again, next to this, I think what's really important with performance in the museum is this, the real, the live, the being there in the moment with somebody, with an object, looking for this interesting balance with that. I just think to end with, I included all these different range of digital ness that's coming to the museums as well, and that performance can relate to, and of course many artists do so already. And just one image to end with. I overloaded you with many images and many kind of ways to look at all these things. And yeah, we can discuss later after the other presentations. Thank you.